Hi, I'm Carl from ProVTV.
And I'm Dan.
So the last episode of Camera Debate has gone out. Thank you so much for all your feedback. We really do appreciate it. And so we've got a couple more lined up for you. What is this one on, Dan?
This one is on the GH5s and the Sony A7S II.
So the two little low light stills cameras of the industry.
Yes.
So what are we talking about first?
First off, same as last time, we're going to talk about image quality. Yeah, so this boils down to sort of really micro four thirds versus full frame.
Yeah.
It is a personal preference. Some people aren't a fan of micro four thirds and really like full frame. Some people don't mind.
Yeah, I mean, I think most people admit that full frame looks better. Whether or not it's better to work with is a whole different argument. But what the things we know for certain is that full frame gives you larger depth of field, it will give you a wider shot, and it means that with the same resolution on the sensor, each pixel should be larger, which should mean better low light performance and better dynamic range. So the Sony has the full frame sensor and the Panasonic has the micro four thirds sensor. I'm sure everybody knows that, but let's just point that out,
just to
make
clarify.
sure that's clear. I know I prefer full frame.
Yeah, same. So much nicer.
It is easier to work with.
Yeah, I mean,
4/3.
it's especially if you're doing something very run and gun, and you're trying to focus with a full frame sensor. I mean, it's no good focusing at sort of f1.4 if you can't get your image in focus.
Yes. And yes, you can say the full frame's got better image quality, but if it's out of focus half the time, then that's not better image quality, is it? There's also a big difference in terms of codec. So GH5s can do 10-bit.
Yes.
And 50p/60p
at
in 4K.
Yeah, whereas
the Sony
can only go up to 30 frames.
Yes. Yeah. So it's real-time codecs, real-time frame rates for the Sonys
in
4K, and it's in 8-bit. Absolutely. Whereas the Panasonics, both the GH5 and the GH5s, can do either 8-bit 50 or 10-bit 25. So that is amazing, to be honest, for such a small little camera.
There's a lot packed in there.
Being able to do either of those two things, let alone both of them, admittedly not at the same time, but both of them are very, very impressive. And does make a big difference to your image quality, because you're going to get better colours with the 10-bit, and everyone loves a little bit of 50p slow motion. I know I use it all the time for the sorts of jobs which these are great for, getting B-roll and shooting events and stuff like that.
Like we did with the media production show video. The whole thing, sort of 4K 50p, and it was made so much of a difference just to, you get so much more out of it.
It's just slow enough that it has this dream-like sort of otherworldly quality.
It's not quite frozen in time.
Exactly, it's not proper slow motion.
Yes. A nice, good middle ground.
I really like 50p as a frame rate.
Yeah.
And so it's great that the Panasonic has that. And the 10-bit obviously is better in colours, but I think the Panasonic's got better colours anyway.
Yeah, I mean, especially compared to it's a different conversation with the GH5, but sort of with the upgrade, the colours are far better.
This is a completely different sensor. In fact, the rumours are that it's a Sony sensor, but it's a completely different sensor from anything else in Panasonic's lineup. And I really like the colours out of the GH5s.
Yes, it's not bad.
The skin tones are brilliant. The colour reproduction is brilliant. The way it renders things like red, like the red bike behind us, is always a tricky one. And the GH5s does it really well, whereas the A7s, not quite. You can go a little bit magenta.
You're going to have to put a bit more work into it if you're going to want it.
You can get either looking nice, but straight out the box with the stock pitch profiles in them. The colours, I think anyway, look better on the Panasonic.
Yeah, definitely. As well, one thing that the Panasonic has that the A7S doesn't have is the anamorphic mode.
Yes.
Which is, again, really impressive. The size of the camera.
It's a little bit niche, but having it in there is
a nice little addition. Yeah.
It's got this multi-aspect ratio sensor, so you don't lose that much resolution by going into 4x3.
No.
In fact, you gain resolution, which is brilliant. It's not quite as high resolution as the other GH5.
Yes, which is another conversation.
But this can do it, and this can't do it.
So where would you pit them against? I mean, it's
Oh,
very, very,
this
very
is
even.
difficult. All I'm thinking is if I had the choice between the two to shoot in very controlled situations. So I'm going to light everything. It's a drama shoot. I can take my time. Which one would I choose for that sort of ultimate image quality test? So taking all the convenience factors out of it. And I think I'm going to choose the Sony.
I don't know if I agree with that, if I'm honest.
Here we go. Here's the debate part.
Here we go. Because, I mean, I'm assuming you're choosing that solely on the full frame look.
Pretty much.
Yeah. Whereas if you adapt this sort of with a speed booster,
Yeah.
you can get around that.
Well, the speed booster will let you get wider shots, it will let you get brighter shots and sharper shots, but it can't replicate the depth of field. It doesn't change the depth of field, and it doesn't change the way that the focal lengths, the sort of perspective on the lenses. There's just something about full frame sensors which can't be replicated on smaller ones, particularly down to micro four thirds. And I really like that look. Whereas with the whole colour argument and everything like that, if this was a run and gun project, if I didn't have time with anything, I would choose the GH5s every single time. But in that narrative example where I have the time, I can shoot an S-Log on here, I can get the colours to exactly where I want them to be, I would choose the Sony.
So we're going to give it ever so slightly to the Sony, or we're going to go over a bit more.
Oh,
I'll figure that out later.
I'm going to give it ever so slightly to the Sony, but that's a controversial one, and I'm sure you guys will have something to say about it in the comments.
Definitely. So low light performance. Both, like we said, are classed as of low light cameras.
Yep.
The A7S, even though it's the older camera, is probably still thought of as being the king of low light cameras.
Yeah, it's got the full frame sensor, so each photo site can be larger. It's hard to get around that. It's a basic physics thing. Because both of these are low megapixel sensors, really, aren't they?
So designed for video work.
Yes, GH5S has slightly lower megapixels with 10 and 12, and I wonder if that is why the GH5S is actually better than we all thought it would be in low light, because it is really impressive.
Yeah, for a micro four thirds sensor, I mean, it's very, very clean.
It blew me away the first time I shot with it. It was really surprising, really was.
And as well, it has the dual native ISO. If you're not going too high with the ISO, it does help make it cleaner. You don't get as much color distortion.
The interesting bit with low light in these cameras is that when it's set to 6400, I actually prefer the image coming out of the Panasonic than I do the Sony, and I've got a whole video going through the low light comparisons of them. But at 64,000 ISO, which is a high ISO, that's real low light, but it's one that we use, and we use it quite regularly. I prefer the GH5S. I think above that, the A7S takes over. The GH5S starts to struggle above.
There's a limit to sort of where you can push it, and then where the Sony really does pull away. Sort of higher.
Yeah, but how often do you use those extremely high ISOs?
Not very often.
How often do you use 64,000?
Yeah, a lot more.
So I think we have to give this one to the Sony because technically it is better in low light. But again, I don't think this is much.
It's not much at all. I mean, considering what it is, the GH5S really does come close.
Yeah, like I say, I was absolutely blown away with the GH5S. But I think let's give it just a little bit towards the Sony.
A little bit. So, lenses. E-mount versus micro four thirds. They've both got their own sort of set of native lenses. You can adapt to either of them.
Either of them. They've both got very, very short flange distances.
So you can put more or less whatever you want.
Yep, exactly. You can both put EF, you can put PL at a stretch. You can put Nikon lenses on these. You can put old lenses like
Vintage
M42,
lenses,
vintage ones. You can adapt to pretty much whatever you want on here.
But I would say you could adapt, you could use more on the GH5s because of that smaller sensor.
Right,
you
so
can then
you'll need
use
full frame
APS-C
coverage
size.
lenses
So
on
you
the
can
Sony.
only use full frame.
Yes, and so that's
Um,
down to the sensor size, not the lens mount.
Yes,
but
it's not.
you're right, yes.
You can technically
Yep.
use more, and then you can use anamorphics as well,
Yes, because
which opens up a few more options.
Yep.
It's not a huge difference, but
Well,
it does.
But if you look at what the actual lenses are, I think there is a big difference. I think the lenses on the full frame lenses for the Sony are higher quality. They are brilliant big lenses, but they're big lenses. On the lovely thing about Micro Four Thirds is that you can
small
get
and compact,
really
light.
small and affordable as well. There are, if you buy the 12 to 35, which is the 24 to 70 equivalent, it's about half the price. They're still pricey lenses. They're about $1,000 or something, but it's about $2,000 for the Sony ones.
Big difference in price.
And they're not as good. They're not as far. They're both f2.8, but on a smaller sensor,
So
that doesn't go as
you don't
far.
get the depth of field.
So really, you need an f1.8 lens to get
the equivalent,
same depth of field. But they're going to be much more convenient lenses, and you're going to be able to buy more of them for the same amount of money.
Yes.
So you can put more lenses on the Panasonic. You can buy more lenses with the Panasonic because they're more affordable, and you can carry more lenses with the Panasonic.
Yep.
So overall, you're going to be walking about with more glass if you have a Panasonic than if you have a Sony.
Yep.
On average, I'd say. But the lenses are better for the Sony. There's some lovely lenses.
The native lenses,
Zeiss makes some gorgeous ones like the Batis lenses. So Sony's ones, the G Masters, are really good now. Even this one, which is a f1.8 55mm
battered
Sony one. It's a little bit battered. This is my own lens, but it's a really lovely lens.
Definitely.
They make some really nice glass for the Sony full frame system, but I think I want to give it to the Pana.
So stills, we didn't do this in the last one.
Well, they were
video cameras. Arguably, these are still video cameras, but they do take stills. I mean, they are hybrid cameras, but they are centered towards video.
They are hybrid cameras, but if you compare them to, say, the A7R from Sony and the actual GH5, you can use those very happily for stills
whereas these,
or for video.
Not as much.
Whereas these, because of the low resolution sensors, they're lacking a little bit from their stills counterparts. But they're both still very nice stills cameras. I shot some beautiful images with the Sony A7S. I took the original one on holiday for holiday snaps because I didn't need anything big. Only 12 megapixels was fine. Got some lovely, lovely images. I haven't shot too much with the Pana, admittedly. I have with the GH5, but not the GH5s. But they're fine. They're perfectly fine. But yes, these are
video-oriented cameras
at heart. They've lowered that megapixel count to get better low light and better video performance because you don't have to downsample quite as much.
I mean, if you're running it off of just pure megapixels, the Sony does have more.
Yes,
it does have that larger sensor as well.
Yep. I think
so. It's not really a fair one to choose because it's so.
The autofocus is better on the Sony as well. It's faster. I think if I was picking one of these up for stills right now, I would pick the Sony every single time.
Same here.
Whether that's justified or not, I don't know, but I would do.
Why not? Codec. So you're basically 10-bit versus 8-bit. I mean, the GH5s has 10-bit.
That's part of it. But it goes much further than that, really, doesn't it? Because this limits you to XAVCS or AVC HD. Really, everyone shooting with this is shooting at XAVCS, which is a long recording, and it's quite a compressed long recording as well. It's much more compressed than its big brother XAVCL, which is in cameras like the FS5 and the FS7. With this Pana though, they've made it really interesting because they have put very similar codecs to their bigger cameras like the Evo and stuff like that in this tiny, tiny package. You can shoot the heavily compressed in here, but you can also shoot intra-frame at 400 megabits a second.
A lot.
Which is huge. Those are really meaty files.
Yeah, you need some fast SD cards for that as well.
You do.
Very fast SD cards.
Definitely. Yep, you need V60 cards, which are going to set you back a little bit compared to V30 cards. But it's worth it. You get large file sizes, but they edit beautifully. And they're intra-frame, so all the information is in every single pixel. But I think it's not that they've added that I was so pleased about. It's that they give you the choice.
Yes,
because
you can choose.
There's a time and a place for both.
150 megabits or 400.
Or even lower if you wanted to on some things. So they really do give you flexibility on codecs.
Yes, whereas this Sony, it's a bit more limited.
It's very limited.
I mean, at 4K, am I right in thinking it's 100 off the top of my head?
It is 100, yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah,
and if you're going down to
150,
HD, you do have a little bit of choice, don't you? But it's
yes,
not.
Yes,
it's not
50 or 35, I think.
But I think for this one, it'd have to go towards GH5s.
I think it's a clear winner for the GH5s, and off the chart winner.
Price. They're both relatively similarly priced. They're not too far off. Sort of, the A7S is just at the £2,000 mark at the moment. The GH5s is just below it.
Yeah, it's about a couple of £100 cheaper, isn't it? But I think it's not just the price of the actual body that you need to take in consideration.
It's the lenses as well.
It's the lenses, it's the batteries, it's the accessories, it's everything around it. And the lenses make a huge difference.
Yes, and they're a lot more expensive than the Sony.
Absolutely, absolutely.
So I mean, if you're buying this as a kit from scratch, you're going to get more for your money. With the Panasonic,
you are going to need to invest more into lenses with the Sony platform, and so as an entire system, it works out quite a bit more expensive.
Yes.
So let's give it to the Pana.
So audio, they're both very similar, just like
similar.
The C200 and the Evo. Both are 3.5mm jacks. You get XLR adapters for each. So it's more or less.
I think the ports are better organised on the Pana.
Yeah, I've never liked the weird flip out sort of cap of the Sony, whereas
these ones are a bit more rubberized and
and then
flexible.
you don't have. They're not quite as big, so they don't get in the way as much.
Yeah, and
it's a bit picky, but
it's placed right up near the top, so I find it gets in the way less as well. Whereas this one can really get in the way of the strap.
Yeah.
But effectively, they're the same.
Yeah. I mean,
there is a difference though, because of which they introduced with the GH5s, in that it can now record in line in rather than just mic in, so that's a lower decibel for connecting to soundboards and stuff like that. And it can. They say phantom power. It's not phantom power.
Yeah, that's debatable.
It's a 5-volt plug-in power, I guess you could call it, which is suitable for small microphones. So some ones from Rode and Saramonic and manufacturers like that. These little microphones that can sit on the top.
On camera,
some of those can be powered from the 3.5mm output of the Pana.
Okay.
Both have got XLR add-ons, and both of them work really, really well. If you're shooting serious video with these, we really recommend getting either the Sony one or the Panasonic one. They both connect through the shoe mount, so there's no extra cables needed. They both sit here on top and give you 2 XLRs in, and better preamps and better controls and everything. So definitely pick one of those.
Don't neglect audio.
Yep. No, it's so worth it.
Definitely. So it does almost ever slightly go towards the GH5s, but it's not by a lot.
On nearly everything they're a draw, but this adds line in and
which
that
gives it that little bit of a nick onto the other side.
Yep.
Okay. Okay, slow motion. So, I mean, I think the GH5s is probably a clear winner.
Clear
in terms of it's a lot slower. It does 4K 60p.
4K 60p is a huge deal. I can't stress that enough. Not
Massive.
having to drop your resolution to just get that little bit of slow motion is brilliant.
Really nice, really nice. And then when you go into variable frame rates, you get up to 240 frames a second, which is impressive to say that when you consider the size of the camera.
Yep. I mean, it's soft and it's very compressed, but it's there.
But it's there, yep. And whereas the A7s goes up to 120, which is nowhere near as slow.
Yeah.
So it's got to go towards the.
Realistically, most people are going to be happy with 120.
Yeah. I mean,
I think they will miss the 4K 60p though. I think they'll miss that
it's
more
the
than
biggest
the 240.
emission from the A7s.
But it's a clear winner for the GH5s.
Easily. And then we've got our final point, which is form factor and convenience.
So this is the big talking point, because these are convenient cameras.
Yes.
The entire reason that you go for a small camera like
It's
this
convenience.
is convenience. They're small, they're light,
Yes.
you can take them places. You can be unobstructed by the public and everything like that. People just think you're a photographer. You can even shoot with them up to your eye.
Very inconspicuous.
Very, very inconspicuous. So let's break them down a little bit.
So, I mean, first off, in terms of on the convenience side, GH5s has dual SD card slots.
Oh, that is a big one.
So for sort of instantly backing up or then rolling off onto another one if you're shooting a live event that's running on for a while.
Now Sony in their Mark IIIs of the A7 and the A7R Mark IIIs have added dual card slots, and they've added longer battery life as well, because we should definitely talk about that.
Yeah.
Because the battery life is
the best.
nowhere near as good on the Sony as it is on the Panasonic. You get roughly 2 hours versus 45 minutes.
Yeah, it's big difference.
Big difference.
Big difference.
But I was saying the Mark III. So at some point, I'm assuming they're going to bring out a Mark III of the A7s.
A lot of people are betting on it.
And all their other Mark IIIs have had better batteries and dual card slots.
Yes.
So hopefully that's something that will get fixed with the next iteration. But right now, you get one SD card slot, and you get a very, very small little battery.
Yes. Which is, I mean, if you compare that to the Panasonics.
Yeah, the physical size of them.
It's a big difference.
You can see why this is only 45 minutes.
Yeah, and then they both have. Actually, no, they don't. Sorry, I'm getting confused here. The Sony has IBIS built in, which
you're
is
thinking of the GH5.
I'm thinking the original GH5.
GH5 has IBIS.
Yes,
GH5S
this one doesn't.
doesn't.
I mean, that's a massive convenience.
Yes.
If you're shooting run and gun.
One thing that is interesting though is that more lenses in the Panasonic system have IS in them than in the Sony system. So you have to get to some quite pricey lenses and the flagship lenses as well to get IS in the Sony system. Whereas with the Panasonic one, most lenses, to be honest, have IS
built in them. Which does do a lot. Sort of.
Absolutely.
It's overlooked. I mean, it's not
it
in
would
the body.
Be an interesting comparison to see this one, the GH5s with the 12 to 35. Has it got better image stabilization than the A7s with the 24 to 70 that doesn't have IS in it? What's better, in body or in the lens?
It's a question for another day, that, isn't it?
It is a question for another day. That would be very interesting. But my point is that you can get IS.
It's a very good point.
I think complaining about the GH5s because it doesn't have inbuilt body stabilization, and I agree with them. But it is not by any means a deciding like it doesn't rule this camera out.
Absolutely not. I mean, IBIS is a relatively new thing. Anyway,
and nearly every lens that I'd be interested in shooting runaround stuff with this camera has IS in it.
Okay, so the next point is they both have a clean HDMI out. So if you want to record externally, you can.
Although this one's full size.
Yes, and that one's weird. I can't remember which one it is off the top of my head.
It's a mini or a micro. It's one of them.
It's one of those.
But it's small and
more fiddly.
Break.
Yes.
They do have a locking things, and But to be honest, the locking things are better with a cage. So if you're shooting with an HDMI out of your A7s Mark II, definitely get a cage.
Yes.
It will save your HDMI cables and potentially your port on your camera.
That's just an expensive
That's
fix.
a big thing.
Yeah.
So there you do get better HDMI output.
Yes,
out of the
but they
GH5
both have. They both have it at the end of the day.
They both have it, but this can
this
get you
one is-
10-bit and
oh,
4K 50p,
didn't
whereas
think
this
of that.
one can't get you 4K 50p and it can't give you 10-bit.
Okay.
So they both have it, but this one's definitely better.
I
Definitely
did
better.
overlook that one. Yes.
Yeah.
Definitely. So you've got the screen as well. In terms of convenience, you can
I
do
don't
more
like
with
this
it.
screen on the Sonys.
No, I mean, I was having a play with it at the weekend. I mean, it's not. It doesn't flip us out as far, but if you're holding it above your head, sort of,
Sure.
it tilts down as much as you're going to need it to be.
Oh, sure, you can see it from most things, apart from if you're shooting like that.
Yes.
Or obviously in
If
selfie
it-
mode in
yes.
front of you. This is just a far better screen
Yes.
though.
Articulates a
terms
lot
of
more. Yeah.
articulating.
You can put it almost anywhere where you.
Although, one
Although,
thing I have just
it's a bit
thought of
interesting.
is if you're holding it like this,
It sticks
this does
out.
tend to get in the way and you can't tilt it down or up without it being there in the way. Whereas on the Sony, you always have the full width there
full
to stabilise the camera up or down.
It doesn't get in the
So
way.
maybe that's a bit closer than I initially thought it was.
Yes. Did overlook that. It is. I mean, it all comes down to which one you prefer. I mean, some people don't
Yeah.
like.
If you're vlogging or anything like that, you're instantly going to prefer this
Oh yeah,
one.
so you can flip it out and see what you're doing.
And I think this does feel sturdier. It feels like a better rotation mechanic.
Yeah, the
It feels
Sony one's
less
it's a
delicate.
lot thinner. And
It's
you,
this little mechanism here. It's just.
if you give that a knock, I don't know how long it would.
Oh, if I did
last.
that, yes,
Yeah,
it would break.
It would
yeah.
be off.
Yeah.
It's a lot tighter than what you think though, when you break it down. It all comes
Do
down
you
to
find
personal
this better
preference.
on the GH5s?
Yeah,
it's a
about
faster refresh rate.
It's bigger. It's easier to put your eye to as well. I find
Softer.
this,
Yeah, they give a softer, bigger.
yeah. So I find that the Sony
cup
one's
to
a
it.
little bit. I don't quite prefer it as much. I mean,
Yeah,
it
they're not
sticks
quite
out a
as
little bit more.
I normally get a Hoodman eye loop on it, which makes it a lot better and bigger, sort of thing, particularly for wearing glasses and stuff like that. The GH5s has time code, whereas this doesn't. So if you're doing video work, that's going to be really useful. It's not normal SDI time code.
It's
It
out
goes in through its flash sync port, which is fascinating.
interesting.
That's a really clever little design, and it's also got no record limit. So if you're doing events or anything like that, the ability to have time code and record for more than half an hour continuously is going to really heavily sway you towards the GH5s.
We've already covered battery life.
We have.
What
we haven't covered is weather sealing, because I think that is one of the biggest points on this list for convenience. Weather sealing is so important, and the GH5s, they say it's weather sealed. Sony don't say that this is weather sealed.
Yes.
And that goes with the lenses as well. Like, for example, this partnership right here, this is relatively weather sealed. I don't think it's quite up to sort of the levels of like the Canon 5D and stuff like that, which is famous for being able to
very good.
Go inside a snowstorm or a volcano or whatever and walk out the other side.
Yep.
But it is weather sealed. If I get shooting outside and I get caught in the rain,
you're not going to instantly panic.
I'm going to worry a lot less about my Panasonic than I am about my Sony.
You have to cover that up very
Absolutely.
quickly. Next point I've got along here is gamma assist on the A7S2, but then again you do still have LUT support on the GH5s.
Oh, I don't know. You'll have to let us know that one in the comment section down below. I haven't prepped that one. But it does let you work with log, and it will give you a view assist in the same way that the Sony one does. And I believe you can toggle both of them on and off with a quick release button. So for when you're working with log,
and you just want to quickly
both should be
back
pretty usable.
Yeah.
And the GH5s now includes log rather than the GH5, which it was a paid add-on. So you do get log with both of these cameras. Overall, there's a lot of points to consider with
there is a lot of points.
Convenience. So let's sum it up. We've got image stabilization, we've got weather sealing. The image stabilization might not be quite as big of a issue because of the lenses.
But it has it in
but
body.
it's still better. You can use
Yes.
any lenses on this and it will have image stabilization.
Whereas you have to be a bit more choosy.
Absolutely.
The viewfinder's better,
Dual card slots,
dual card slots.
better battery life.
Arguably better screen,
Yep,
the better built screen.
yep.
Time code.
I reckon let's give
yeah.
it to the Panasonic, but
It's not
by a
much.
crazy amount,
No,
but I think it's more than just a little slither.
Yeah. Okay, so looking at everything we've chosen, it would have to give it to the Panasonic, but it's very interesting how.
I mean, we don't need to choose a winner. I don't think in these debate shows we need to choose an
yeah,
overall
yeah.
winner. But we've chosen the Panasonic for more
times out, yeah.
categories than the Sony. I do like
yes.
full frame sensors though, and
I mean that will come down to that will be a big part of a decision between for most people.
Yeah.
It's, you know, it's
I mean,
one of the
so
big.
often you get the sensible choice and you get the one that you want to go for.
Yes.
And for me, that the benefits of having a full frame sensor and just the way that the images feel, I just like shooting with a full frame sensor. I own a Sony and I chose it over the Panasonic 5 for exactly that reason.
Full
And
frame.
even though I can't afford that many lenses to go with it, whereas I would have been able to afford a lot more if I'd gone with the Panasonic. So it might not have been the smartest decision in the world.
Yep.
It's just really interesting to see how they break down next to one another.
Yeah, I mean, sort of. They do fall very close in some categories as well. It's, you know, we didn't give it by far to either in places.
What's interesting is that I think the company mentality between Panasonic and Sony is very similar with these.
Yes.
They're both very much tech-focused camera companies. They try and pile as many tech specs into such a small little body and for each one of their cameras as they possibly can, which has got to be commended.
Yes, without doubt.
That is brilliant. They're both fantastic little cameras. They really are. Cool.
Okay.
So thank you very much for watching. As always, this format is growing and progressing, so we really would like to see what you guys think of this. So please do leave us a comment. We do read all of them and we try and reply to as many as we possibly can.
We had some good ones on the last one as well.
Yeah, it's really interesting.
You got quite involved, so it's always good to see.
Cool.
It's sweet.
Thanks for watching.